Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the unveiling ceremony for Australia's first MQ-4C Triton. In a moment, I will introduce our first speaker, but first, a few housekeeping rules. If you were authorized to bring a phone into the ceremony, please silence it at this time if you have not already done so. Following the reveal of the Triton, we will have a question and answer period with members of our media and our speakers. So I ask that as applause comes to an end, you retake your seat and remain in place until the end of the Q&A period. After the media Q&A period concludes, you will be allowed to approach the aircraft, but please use the path to the left and do not walk over the top of the curtain. You may walk around the aircraft, but please remain 6 feet or 2 meters, social distancing rules if you will, and do not walk under the wings of the aircraft, and most importantly, please don't touch the aircraft. We will have a photographer in place, positioned for pictures in front of the Triton if you wish. We do have pre-identified groups, so please leave them preference and priority. Thank you for your attention. Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, Tom Jones, President of Northrop Grumman's Aeronautics Systems Sector.
So thank you very much. I'd like to begin by thanking all the people who traveled out here to join Northrop Grumman for the rollout of our first Australian Triton, and also to Jane and her team for allowing me to come in and participate in this very momentous event. Before I begin, I'd like to welcome the attending distinguished visitors that we have with us today. We have with us from the Australian Defence Staff in Washington, Major General Andrew Freeman. We also have on the stage Air Vice Marshal Robert Denny, head of the Air Force Capability Air Force Headquarters for the Royal Australian Air Force. Jane Duke, the Australian Consul General. Rear Admiral Stephen Tedford from the U.S. Navy, Program Executive Officer of the Unmanned Aviation and Strike Weapons. I'd also like to welcome all the Australian members of the Cooperative Program Office at Program Management Activity 262, the Honorable Tom Lackey, California Assemblyman and member of the Select Committee on Aerospace, Mr. George Runner, Chief of Staff to the Assembly Member, Ms. Jackie Owens from Congressman Garcia's office, the Honorable Stephen Hoffbauer, Palmdale Mayor and member of the City Council, and Ms. Donna Termere with the Los Angeles Supervisor, Catherine Barger. Let me first start, before I get into comments on the Triton itself, I'd like to express my condolences on the passing of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, by the grace of God, Queen of Australia, and her other realms and territories, head of the Commonwealth. This is a really significant day, I would say, not just for Northrop Grumman, but I'd like to think also for the Commonwealth of Australia and the U.S. Navy in general to be able to field this capability for the first time. The Australian Triton program has a long history. It actually dates all the way back to 2001, where DARPA in the United States, along with the U.S. Navy and the Australian Royal Air Force, flew a series of missions in Australia with the Block 10 Global Hawk, evaluating the operational effectiveness of this unmanned ISR platform to meet the defense needs of Australia. This led ultimately to Australia forming a cooperative development relationship with the U.S. Navy to develop the MQ-4C Triton, which we see or will see shortly here today. Along the way, Australia has been intimately involved in the development. CASG and the Royal Australian Air Force joined in the requirements development way back when the system was referred to as the BAMS system. They were an active part of the source selection and have been along with us in the entire development as we've gone along. Triton represents a truly revolutionary capability from an ISR perspective. I mentioned earlier on the BAMS program. That program actually has just retired from service within the last several months. It started as a 6-month test deployment to the CENTCOM area of operations. That turned into a 14-year deployment where the BAMS platform amassed almost 45,000 hours of collecting ISR in the CENTCOM region. The Global Hawk platforms from which Triton has been derived, as I mentioned, the Global Hawk Block 10s, have actually amassed a little over 300,000 hours of operation in multiple theaters in support of the U.S. Joint Forces. And then Triton itself is in the end stages of a early operational capability deployment to the Western Pacific, where just 2 aircraft in the period of about 2 years have amassed 4,000 flight hours collecting ISR for the U.S. Navy. So very excited to get this system out and into test and ultimately to deliver it in the near future to the Royal Australian Air Force so that they will be able to begin engaging with the U.S. Navy and keeping the Western Pacific safe and free. So with those comments, I'd like to turn it over to the Vice President and General Manager of the Global Surveillance Division here at the Aeronautics sector, Ms. Jane Bishop.
Thank you, Tom. Good evening, good morning, or good afternoon, wherever this worldwide event finds you. I'm Jane Bishop, Vice President and General Manager of Northrop Grumman's Global Surveillance Division. Welcome and thank you for joining us today live from our Palmdale, California facility for this milestone event. I'd also like to echo Tom's welcome to all of our distinguished visitors who came from across the United States and as far as Australia to be here today. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedules to be here with us to commemorate the rollout of Australia's first MQ-4C Triton. The past few years have seen this program gain an incredible amount of momentum. The United States Navy Unmanned Patrol Squadron 19, or VUP-19, deployed Triton for the first time to support U.S. Pacific Command operations in early 2020, where it immediately proved its value in maritime patrol. We flew the first multi-intelligence configured Triton in July of 2021. We delivered the first multi-intelligence configured Triton to the United States Navy earlier this year. We've also flown our flying testbed in numerous demonstrations to accelerate development of new capabilities that will make Triton even more capable than it already is. To really ice the cake, Northrop Grumman has been in the full throes of development and integration of the multi-intelligence capability into the Triton system, which will prove an even more robust capability than the baseline aircraft that have been supporting the U.S. PAC fleet since early 2020. As a strategic partner in the Cooperative Development Program, Australia has been a critical part of Triton's development and production. I'll let my Australian friends highlight what Triton will mean for Australia's unique security requirements, but I do want to explain a little bit about what this system can do. Triton can remain airborne for more than 24 hours at altitudes above 50,000 feet and surveil more than 2.4 million square kilometers of ocean. From Australia, Triton can conduct surveillance missions as far north as Japan or as far east as America's Samoa in a single flight. Triton can also completely survey Australia's entire mainland exclusive economic zone in a single flight. In addition, Triton can survey Heard and McDonald Islands, Australia's Antarctic regions, and Macquarie Island in a single flight. All of these missions can be accomplished with loiter time to spare while simultaneously feeding near real-time information to the commander's common operating picture. No other unmanned system in the world can provide the advanced decision-making products and situational awareness that Triton can. Triton is a game changer. In June of 2020, Australia funded 3 Triton air vehicles, 2 main operating bases, and 1 forward operating base, helping the Triton program during a challenging period of time. In October of 2020, we began to build the first Australian Triton, And in December of the same year, we married the one-piece wing to the fuselage, and the aircraft started to look like an aircraft. Today, we get to see AUS-1 in a fully built state for the very first time. Behind this curtain is the compilation of thousands of parts, miles of cable, and dozens of hands. Australian Industrial Base has also provided critical components to this aircraft. Getting to this point in the Australian Triton program has required significant amount of teamwork between the Royal Australian Air Force, the United States Navy, and Northrop Grumman. I should also tell you that as I stand here today, our development team is full steam ahead on progress of the multi-intelligence capability of Triton at Naval Air Station, Patuxent River, Maryland, which is on track for delivery in 2023. When the Royal Australian Air Force takes delivery of this system, they will receive the most robust maritime intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance, and targeting capability on the planet. I'm incredibly proud of the Triton team, a team of ferociously dedicated people who place relentless effort into developing, producing, delivering, sustaining, and advancing this unprecedented capability. Today is an exciting day for all of us, but especially for those who work this program on a daily basis. I'd now like to welcome to the podium Naval Air Systems Command Program Executive Officer for Unmanned Aviation and Strike Weapons, Rear Admiral Stephen Tedford.
I guess I'll follow suit. Good afternoon, good morning, and good evening. Thank you, Jane, for that introduction and the opportunity to speak today. I'm honored to be here in person to commemorate this significant milestone with our Australian partners. I know there was a lot of time and effort that went into coordinating this event, so I'd like to thank everyone involved in making this happen. I'd also like to welcome Australian Air Vice Marshal Rob Denny, Major General Andrew Freeman, and Counsel General Jane Duke. Thank you again for making the trip. I'd also like to welcome the members of the Australian Defence Department who unfortunately could not be here today with us in person, but are able to celebrate this event virtually today. The past few years, to say they've been a challenge is an understatement. With much of our team working remotely, geographically dispersed, and across many time zones, I am so impressed with the continued productivity and the great work that this team continues to do. Our partnerships near and far remain strong as we prepare to deliver the first Triton aircraft to Australia. Since World War I and every major conflict since, our U.S. and Australian forces have fought side by side, and today our alliance is pivotal for peace and stability in the Indo-Pacific region. Our continued partnership will allow both our nations to better project military power, maintain our competitive edge, and maintain peace and stability in the region. As a P-3 pilot, I had the distinct pleasure throughout my career of experiencing that partnership firsthand, whether during RIMPAC exercises off the coast of Hawaii, or while conducting anti-submarine warfare operations in the East and South China Seas, or operating with Australian crews in the Persian Gulf. The professionalism, pride, and dedication to service and freedom was always present. There is a deep connection between our two countries, and it is especially strong within the maritime patrol and reconnaissance community. Our cooperative team has worked together for several decades, and most recently, having RAF personnel embedded in key roles with Team Triton has helped ensure the success of the program for both of our nations. MQ-4 Triton's journey began in 2009. Since that time, this platform has expanded its capabilities far beyond those it started with. In the fall of 2019, as Jane just mentioned, Triton made her first deployment to Guam, where she continues to fly today. There we learned how to operate, how to maintain and sustain this critical platform. A year from now, the next increment in advanced capabilities, IFC-4 Increment 1, will begin operations out of Guam once again, making her presence known throughout the Indo-Pacific region. It is this advanced increment of capability that will also be coming to Australia to Australian shores in the very near future. MQ-4C Triton will significantly improve Australian and U.S. capabilities in the region, enhancing our joint ability to respond to regional challenges, including humanitarian assistance and disaster relief. Teamed with the P-8, Triton will be a key component of the Navy's family of systems to achieve maritime domain awareness and dominance. It will provide a persistent ISR data collection and dissemination capability across vast oceans and coastal regions. Today is a celebration of a milestone. Today, the Australian MQ-4 fleet of aircraft take their first steps in the unmanned arena. We welcome you and congratulate you on this tremendous accomplishment. There are many more milestones ahead of us to achieve. Together, I am confident that our dedicated team of military, civilian, and Northrop Grumman personnel will work tirelessly to deliver this aircraft and many more to come. Thank you again for your support and your partnership. I look forward to the future and can't wait to see what Team Triton does next. Thank you very much.
G'day. That covers all time zones. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Chief of Air Force, Air Marshal Robert Chipman, thank you for the opportunity to be here today. As the head of Air Force capability, it's a privilege for me to witness the rollout of the first Australian MQ-4C Triton aircraft. This represents a watershed moment in the advancement of air power for Australia. The significance and importance of Triton to Australia's intelligence, surveillance and reconnaissance capability cannot be overstated. And while Triton is primarily designed for intelligence, surveillance and reconnaissance, it will support a broad range of joint effects that fully integrate into our combat architecture. It will revolutionise the way the Australian Defence Force conducts operations with our partners and allies. The bilateral cooperation program approach for Triton between Australia and the United States is testament to the ongoing success of our cooperative efforts as our long-standing relationship continues to strengthen. Australia is a proud partner in the Triton program. Our embedded personnel are gaining the required knowledge and experience to bring the aircraft back to Australia and establish our future successes. I'm pleased with their contribution and that it assists in the success of our shared goals. With the collaborative and supportive nature of the cooperative program reflected in the many positive comments I've heard today. In working together with the US Navy and our industry partners to develop the capability for this aircraft, we are pushing the boundaries of air power and pursuing a truly advanced platform that will provide both a foundation of capability and a growth path for decades. The path to Triton's successful introduction into Australian service is being realised on the back of many years of cooperation, trust and support between the Royal Australian Air Force, the United States Navy and Northrop Grumman, both here in the US and at home in Australia. I congratulate Northrop Grumman and their team of engineers, technicians and support staff on this significant occasion. I have no doubt that the Triton will serve our nation with distinction for many years. And on behalf of the Chief and all the aviators of the Royal Australian Air Force, thank you.
Thanks everyone, distinguished guests. It's an honour for me to be at Northrop Grumman today for the unveiling of the first Australian MQ-4C Triton. This landmark occasion is an excellent example of the successful partnership between the Australian Department of Defence, the United States Navy and defence industry partner Northrop Grumman. Today's unveiling is another demonstration of Australia's commitment to strengthen our defence capabilities and our resolve to take on greater responsibility for our own security. Australia has a long history of upholding the international rules-based order and working with regional partners to support a secure, stable and peaceful Indo-Pacific. And our partnership with the United States is essential to that effort. For over 70 years, the ANZUS Treaty has been a core pillar of the American-Australia relationship. And it's just as relevant today as it was in the aftermath of World War II. Australia's Deputy Prime Minister and Minister for Defence most recently described the alliance as the cornerstone of Australia's foreign and security policy. The alliance is underpinned by our nation's shared geopolitical interests and our support for democracy, for open economies, and free and just societies. There is no more important partner to Australia than the United States, and we remain committed to improving alliance cooperation. And so it's fortuitous that almost a year ago to the day that the AUKUS partnership was announced by the leaders of Australia, the United States, and the United Kingdom. The AUKUS marks a new phase in the ever-deepening cooperation and has highlighted our special place of strategic trust. AUKUS demonstrates our shared interests in meeting the challenges of the 21st century. AUKUS will improve our capability, our interoperability, and our industrial base. The sharing of sensitive technologies, the building of our workforce, and increasing our industrial capabilities are all part of these ambitions. And of course, collaboration with defence industry is essential to realising that goal. The Australian Government's investment in acquiring the Triton will provide the Royal Australian Air Force with the ability to detect and analyse threats that were well beyond previous capabilities. It's a significant milestone that highlights the tremendous partnership of all involved, and I'd like to add my congratulations to the incredible Northrop Grumman team for their achievement. And now I'd like to introduce California State Assembly member and member of the Select Committee on Aerospace, Mr. Tom Lackey. Thank you.
Wow, what an honor it is to be introduced by someone from Australia and such a dignified individual. Welcome I want to welcome all of you from Australia and the U.S. Navy to a place we call home here in Palmdale. We also call this place Aerospace Valley because it is the heart and soul of this region. The first settlers from Australia arrived on California shores in 1848, and they were seeking new opportunities at the beginning of the state's gold rush. The partnership between California and Australia now expands more than 175 years. But formal diplomatic relations were not established until 1940. It is the strong relationship between the people, as well as the nations, that brought about this opportunity to allow California to share its best aerospace and military technology to protect freedom and democracy in the Pacific. Founded in 1939, Northrop Grumman has been developing autonomous systems for nearly 8 decades to support military and the mission for men and women wearing the uniform around the world that now includes Australians. Northrop Grumman, as the premier developer of high-altitude and long-endurance systems, which set a world record for the longest air flight on a single tank of gas for autonomous system, the first delivery of the Australian Triton carries with it 83 years of military service, which will allow Australia to sustain peace and prosperity throughout the Pacific region. To Tom Jones, President of the Aeronautics Systems, and to your team, California is a proud partner with Northrop Grumman. I congratulate your entire Palmdale team for this incredible milestone to allow America and its allies, including Australia, to support freedom and democracy around the entire world. Again, congratulations to everyone for this remarkable achievement, and thank you for allowing me to share my sentiments with you. Thank you.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Christine Zeitz, and I am the General Manager, VP for Asia Pacific and come to you from Australia. So good afternoon and welcome those in Australia on Zoom. I know the Northrop Grumman Australia team, Defence colleagues and partners in Australia are very excited about this milestone for the Triton program, and it is wonderful that you've joined us today. Northrop Grumman Australia is very proud of our role in delivering and sustaining the Triton capability. Whether Triton is operating in support of the Australian Defence Force, our regional partners, or our major allies, we know that it has a unique and vital role to play across the Indo-Pacific, including Antarctica. Triton is one of our company's signature programs in Australia and exemplifies the long-term investment and commitment to our nation. That commitment has the backing of the company's leadership here in the US and has translated into tangible economic, employment and skill benefits for Australians. In economic terms, Northrop Grumman Australia has transitioned to a model that includes full profit and loss accountability in Australia. We spent over $1 billion in the Australian economy over the 4-year period to 2020, and that contribution to our economy grows as programs like Triton come online. On the jobs front, Northrop Grumman Australia and our partners provide employment for over 1,400 Australians. Most of those jobs are highly skilled roles in engineering, aviation, information technology, program management and manufacturing. Knowledge transfer from the US and support to local R&D is also a fundamental principle of our operating model. I mentioned our partners and how we are committed to growing sovereign skills, and Triton has been a great example of that commitment. Our industry partners in Australia are producing world-class components for the Triton program, including AME Systems from Victoria and Ferret Engineering from Queensland. AME Systems provides cable components for the Triton and have spent the last few years working through the Northrop Grumman supplier accreditation process. As a result, they are now one of less than a handful of suppliers globally that are accredited to supply cables to the program. Similarly, Ferret Engineering have been accredited to manufacture chassis components for one of the Triton sensors, and we are very proud of the work they continue to do on this program, and I know they're joining us today on Zoom, so thank you for your partnership. Pleasingly, our in-service sustainment work on Triton will continue to see more skills and knowledge transferred to Australians, and we are now hard at work preparing for the arrival of the ground systems and aircraft. Some of you may know that Northrop Grumman Australia already works very closely with the RAF and CASG by providing sustainment support for the RAF's KC-30 tankers, the C-27J tactical lift, and the fleet of special purpose aircraft used for VIP transport. So as we prepare for the Triton sustainment support, we will of course leverage that experience. But we also recognise that Triton will bring fundamentally new sustainment challenges. And with that in mind, we are working closely with our US colleagues who, as Tom mentioned, have a long pedigree in building and sustaining high altitude and long endurance UAVs. They are already providing our teams the training and knowledge transfer we will need to transition to an Australian sustainment workforce as quickly as we can. In doing so, we will create over 100 new jobs in South Australia and the Northern Territory. So finally, I want to reflect on what motivates our team in Northrop Grumman Australia. We understand the rapidly changing geostrategic environment, especially in our own backyard, and we know that the Australian Defence Force needs the best equipment developed and backed by the best defence industry partners, and they need it now. In particular, sovereign maritime ISR capabilities that can provide responsive surveillance across Australia's area of intelligence interest are crucial to Defence's shape, deter and respond strategy, and I have no doubt will be an important consideration in the current Defence Strategic Review. So Triton will enable the RAF to do the heavy lifting when it comes to broad area maritime ISR missions across the Indo-Pacific, Its state-of-the-art sensor suite, range and endurance surpasses anything we have seen in the region. And furthermore, Triton can provide Australia and our allies strategic deterrence by detection to help reduce the chance of conflict in the first place. This contribution to Australia's national security and keeping Australia safe is what motivates us every day at Northrop Grumman. And we're committed to ensuring that Triton is the best and it serves Australia well. I'd like to add my personal congratulations to all involved in the program on this milestone today and look forward to our continued cooperation and success as we look towards delivery, stand-up and operation of the capability in Australia in the years ahead. And I'd like now to welcome Tom Jones back to the podium.
So for the last 20 minutes, we've talked about a lot of things. We've talked about strategic requirements, strategic capabilities. We've talked about the strategic cooperation and collaboration between Australia and the United States. We've talked about the team that has been forged between the Royal Australian Air Force, the United States Navy, and Northrop Grumman, all to bring a great capability to the Western Pacific region. That said, as Mr. Lackey pointed out, we are in the Aerospace Valley, and if you are someone who lives in this area, or if you're one of the thousands of people in this valley that are employed in the aerospace industry, there's always a certain thrill you get when you have an opportunity to see one of the magnificent aircraft that are manufactured on this Plant 42 site take wing or roll down a runway. And there's a even more special feeling that you get at a rollout, particularly if you're one of the members of the development team or the production team who's labored for years with the design, the procurement, the building, the testing of an aircraft. And I think at this point, I'd like to move on to the main event, if you will, which is actually getting an opportunity to see this magnificent aircraft that this entire team has been able to put together, including customers and our employees here at Northrop Grumman. The keel of the first Australian MQ-4C was laid in October of 2020, as we've already mentioned, and a lot has happened since then, as we'll get to see in just a second. Ladies and gentlemen, I ask you to join with me in welcoming OZ-1 as the very first Triton MQ-4C of the Royal Australian Air Force.
Well, that was exciting. Thank you for following the ask at the beginning of the ceremony. I know watching something like that appear in front of you it's kind of hard to hold your position. But at this time, we would like to turn over to a media question and answer. We have the vast majority of our media participants dialed in via Zoom. So this will be a little bit of a unique exchange. We have someone reading the questions off of the Zoom window, and we'll ask each individual that those questions are addressed to take the podium to address those. So I think at this time, we'll ask what the first question is.
This question is for Rear Admiral Tedford.
I should have known I was going to be first.
Audrey Decker from Inside Defense asks, in terms of maintenance, have the U.S. and Australia had any conversations about shared maintenance facilities now that both countries have Triton? Eventually, MQ-4s will need to go through depot-level maintenance. How are you looking at maintenance, and is there any initial thinking on how the countries can help each other out?
Audrey, thank you for the question. Yes, we are in conversations. We started those conversations earlier this summer and actually in the early spring time frame. It makes perfect sense that we would have that conversation and talk about what is a shared approach to depot level maintenance for this amazing platform. The truth is we don't have the answers quite yet. We are working through what will make the best sense, and the good thing is we have time to figure that out, how much of the depot maintenance repair, how much of that will be done here in the United States, how much of it should be done in Australia, which components, at what level, and for what source of repair. So I appreciate the question. There is quite a bit of conversation that has started. No definitive answers quite yet. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next question, please.
This question is for Air Vice Marshal Denny. Jamie Freed from Reuters asks, what is the Royal Australian Air Force thinking in terms of acquisition plans for MQ-4C Triton beyond the initial 3, particularly given it has decided not to proceed with the MQ-9B Sky Guardian project? And does it have a numerical ratio in mind between the ideal number of P-8 Poseidons and MQ-4C Triton?
Okay, the number of aircraft, the program of record effectively for the Triton is up to 7 aircraft. The final number to be acquired will be a decision for government, which will be made most likely after the outcomes of the Defence Strategic Review are known. And that Defence Strategic Review will take into consideration, no doubt, the decision not to proceed on the Sky Guardian. With respect to numerical ratios between the Poseidon and the Triton, while they're both complementary systems and they both operate in the maritime domain, we don't look at it with a specific ratio in mind. We just see them as both providing flexibility despite the ratio.
Thank you, sir.
We also have a question from Steve Trimble of Aviation Week here.
Okay, Steve.
Hi, thank you for letting me be here today. And this question is for Air Vice Marshal Denny. When do you expect to see this aircraft arrive at RAAF Tyndall? And I'm also curious about the operational concept for Australia compared to U.S. Navy. They're looking at continuous orbits in specific geographic areas. Is something like that possible with the program of record for Australia, or do you have a different idea in mind for how to use it?
The aircraft's due to arrive around mid-2024 at RAAF Base Tyndall, commence operating from there. The concept of operation will somehow depend on the previous question in terms of the total number. With 3 aircraft, you can maintain a permanent orbit, but we could potentially expand that if the decision is made to acquire more.
Thank you, sir. Next question.
That concludes the Q&A. Thank you.
Oh. Must be a reflection of very descriptive. Thank you, everybody, for your time. Again, ladies and gentlemen, you will be allowed to approach the aircraft. Please stay 6 feet away Once the photographer is posted, we again ask that you defer to a handful of pre-identified groups for photographs, so that the embassy delegation, our government delegation, both from the state and federal government, the Australian Cooperative Program Office, the NAVAIR team, the Northrop Grumman leadership team, and then we'll do one solid group photo. And after that, feel free to cycle in as you please. Thank you very much.